Welcome to Whispers in the Dark. I'm here to help you unwind and relax this evening. Before we begin, I'd love for you to take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if you truly enjoy the experience I create here. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always wonderful to see how this channel brings together a global community. Just so you know, there will only be a few ads within the first 15 minutes. And after that, the rest of the video will be completely ad-free. I hope you'll give this story a chance. I believe you won't find tales quite like these anywhere else. Now, dim the lights, put on your headphones, perhaps turn on a fan for a gentle background hum, and let's begin our evening together. What if one stormy night you stumbled into a house that should never have been found, a place where every photo hides a secret and every shadow whispers a promise you'll regret keeping? This isn't just a story, it's what happened to Gideon. And once you hear it, you'll understand why some doors should never be opened. It all started on an ordinary winter evening, with nothing more sinister than an argument. Gideon was furious. His parents had refused to let him attend a Christmas party. Voices were raised, words were thrown, and in a burst of anger, he slammed the door behind him and stormed out into the night. Snow was already falling thick, the wind cutting across his face as if warning him to turn back. But Gideon wasn't listening. The sting of his family's words echoed louder than the storm. With every step he took into the blinding white, the warmth of home faded, replaced by a creeping silence. Minutes passed, then hours, or maybe it only felt that way. The world around him grew quieter, emptier. It was just him, the endless snow, and the gnawing sense that he was walking straight into something he couldn't escape. And then, in the middle of that desolate storm, Gideon slipped. His body hit the frozen ground with a sickening thud, and darkness swallowed him whole. But the storm wasn't the only thing waiting for him that night. When Gideon opened his eyes, the world was a blur of white and shadows. His breath came in sharp bursts, frosting in the air as he tried to push himself upright. Every muscle ached, every sound swallowed by the storm. For a moment, he thought he might still be unconscious, trapped in some half-dream. Then he saw it, light, dim, flickering, impossibly far through the swirling snow. A window glowing faintly in the distance, like a beacon calling him forward. Staggering to his feet, Gideon stumbled toward it. Each step sank into the drifts, pulling at his legs, slowing him down. The cold gnawed at his skin, needling deeper with every second. But that light was all he had. It was either reach it, or let the storm bury him. And as he drew closer, the shape of a house began to emerge. Not just a house, an enormous manor, towering and silent, its windows glowing like watchful eyes in the dark. Relief flickered through him, but it didn't last. Because even from a distance, he could tell something about that place wasn't right. The house wasn't a refuge. It was a trap waiting to close. The massive front doors groaned as Gideon pushed them open, their hinges screaming against years of silence. A rush of air swept past him, thick, stale, and heavy with dust. The moment he stepped inside, the storm outside seemed to vanish, cut off as though the house itself had swallowed him whole. The foyer stretched out in front of him, grand and decayed. Chandeliers hung overhead, their crystals dull and coated in grime. Faded wallpaper peeled away in strips, exposing rotting wood beneath. Furniture sat shrouded in white sheets, ghostly silhouettes in the flickering glow of a dying fireplace. But it wasn't just the decay that unsettled him. It was the silence. No creak of the house settling, no rattle of wind through cracks. Just a stillness so complete it pressed against his ears. Trying to shake it off, Gideon's eyes wandered to the far wall. A long hallway stretched into darkness, lined with portraits. He moved closer, drawn by the faint glimmer of their gilded frames. At first, they seemed ordinary, family portraits, carefully posed and framed in heavy gold. But the more he looked, the more something felt wrong. Every single face in every single photo was gone, scratched out, gouged away until nothing but empty silhouettes remained. His stomach dropped. It wasn't vandalism. It was deliberate. Someone hadn't just erased these people, they wanted them forgotten. And that was only the beginning. Gideon leaned closer, his breath fogging against the cracked glass. The scratches weren't random. They were violent, Deep grooves clawed straight through the faces, leaving the rest of the portraits untouched. Fine clothes, elegant poses, proud postures, all preserved. But the people themselves had been ripped away. One frame caught his eye. A family gathered around a Christmas tree. He could see the ornaments, the glint of tinsel, the warmth of a fire behind them. But where their smiles should have been, there was nothing, just black scars cutting through the canvas. A shiver crawled down his spine. He wasn't alone here. He could feel it. The silence of the manor seemed to pulse, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Every step he took down the hallway made the floorboards groan in protest. Shadows stretched where they shouldn't. His pulse quickened, but his legs carried him forward, deeper into the house, as if guided by something unseen. Then, just as his hand brushed against another frame, the lights flickered. For the briefest second, Gideon swore he saw faces staring back at him, twisted, eyeless, screaming. And when the lights steadied, the portraits were faceless again. But the house had made its point. It wasn't just a place. It was alive, and it wanted him to see more. That night, Gideon couldn't fight the exhaustion. The storm outside had drained him, and the cold inside the manor was numbing. He collapsed into a moth-eaten chair by the dead fireplace, the silence pressing in until his eyes slid shut. And then he dreamed. At first it was only whispers, faint as wind through broken glass. But the whispers shaped themselves into words, and the words into a voice, a woman's voice, calling his name. Gideon. He turned, and she was there, a figure cloaked in shadow, her face pale but blurred, as if unseen hands were still clawing it away. Yet her eyes burned through the darkness, desperate, pleading. "Promise me," she begged. Her lips trembled. "Promise you won't forget me." Gideon's throat closed. The air in the dream was heavy, suffocating. He tried to speak, but the words stuck. The woman's voice cracked with sorrow. "They betrayed me. They left me to suffer. Don't let me vanish. Promise me." Her hands reached toward him, trembling, shaking as if bound by chains he couldn't see. Her touch was cold fire on his skin. And just as he whispered the word, "Yes," a scream shattered the dream, a scream so piercing it jolted him awake. The house was no longer silent. Something was burning. Gideon shot upright, his chest heaving. The dream still clung to him, but the smell was real, smoke, thick and acrid, filling his lungs. The fireplace he'd thought was dead now blazed with violent flames, sparks leaping as though the fire had been waiting for him to fall asleep. The heat pressed against his face, too strong, too sudden. He stumbled backward, coughing, but the room offered no relief. The walls themselves seemed to ripple in the firelight, warped and unsteady. Then the doors slammed. Every exit he'd noticed before, the grand doors, the side halls, even the window latches, shut with a force that rattled the frames. The house wasn't just holding him. It was locking him in. Heart pounding, Gideon spun toward the staircase. Up was his only option. The smoke chased him as he climbed, curling up the banister like black fingers reaching for his throat. Each step groaned under his weight, but he didn't dare stop. Something in the flames whispered his name, dragging out the syllables like a taunt. Gideon. He staggered onto the landing, eyes watering, chest burning. Behind him, the fire roared, consuming the walls. But ahead, behind those locked doors upstairs, something far worse was waiting. The hallway seemed endless, stretching into a haze of smoke and shadows. Every door Gideon passed felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for him. The air was suffocating, each inhale scraping his throat raw. The first room he checked was ruined. Broken chairs, torn curtains, walls stained with mildew. Nothing but rot. But the second door, that was different. The handle burned with cold, a sharp sting against his palm. When it gave way, a wave of stench rolled out, thick and metallic, gagging him instantly. His eyes adjusted to the gloom, and then he saw it. In the far corner stood a narrow closet, its wood warped with age. From beneath the door seeped a slow, sticky trickle, dark, almost black against the floorboards. His gut clenched, but he couldn't stop himself. The door creaked open. Inside, the air was heavy with decay. Piled in the shadows were remains, shattered bones, scraps of flesh clinging in grotesque patches, as if time had tried but failed to erase them. They weren't buried. They weren't honored. They were discarded. Gideon staggered back, while burning his throat. His hand slammed against a dresser, steadying him, and that's when he noticed it. A hatbox, perfectly centered, untouched by dust, untouched by rot. Waiting. His pulse hammered in his ears. Against every instinct, he reached out, lifted the lid, and froze. Inside lay a woman's head, resting on faded silk. Her skin was pale, stretched thin, her lips frozen in a twisted half-scream. The eyes, empty, glassy, yet fixed on him with horrifying clarity. And recognition struck him like lightning. He had seen her before. In the dream. Victoria Peton. The hatbox slipped from Gideon's hands, crashing to the floor. The head rolled across the boards, stopping at his feet. Its empty eyes stared straight into him. And in that silence, he heard it again, her voice. Gideon. The sound didn't come from the hallway. It didn't come from the dream. It came from the air itself, seeping through the walls, curling inside his skull. He turned, and she was there. Victoria Peton. Not flesh and bone, but a figure of smoke and shadow, her torn dress drifting like ash, her eyes hollow but burning with sorrow. Her lips trembled as she reached out. Chains of darkness coiled around her wrists. You found me, she whispered. Now you must promise. Gideon stumbled back, his throat dry. Promise what? Her face twisted, grief bleeding into rage. That you won't forget me. That you won't let them erase what they did. They locked me here. They silenced me. But you will carry me. The walls groaned. The floor shuddered. And the fire below roared higher, as if feeding on her fury. Gideon's chest clenched. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere left to go. Her chains rattled as she moved closer, her hand grazing his cheek. Cold, sharp, a touch that froze him to the marrow. Promise me, she hissed, or be buried with me. His lips trembled. Against his will, the word slipped out. I promise. The house fell silent. The smoke cleared. The flames died in an instant. But as Gideon fled the manor, stumbling into the snow, he knew he hadn't escaped. The promise clung to him, heavier than chains. And for the rest of his life, he would hear her whisper in the dark, "Don't forget me." And that's the end of tonight's tales. Thank you for keeping me company. It makes the darkness a little less lonely. I hope you found that perfect mix of fear and fascination. I'll be back tomorrow with more stories and mysteries. Until then, sleep well, and remember, they're only stories. Sweet dreams, my friend.